What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have a special guest all the way in Detroit. He's actually a personal friend of ours back in the days of Equinox. He's a sleep coach. He was a tremendous football player at Michigan State, CSCS certified. He's been everywhere around the country, Miami, Chicago, NYC, currently in Detroit, like I mentioned. Guys, please help me welcome the one and only tremendous coach, Todd Anderson. What's up, brother?
I wish you were still in Miami. Miss you, man.
I was right now.
Yeah. So how's everything? How's everything been going? I know you just moved from New York to Detroit. How's that transition been so far?
It's been good, man. I mean, I definitely miss parts of New York. Like, there's so much. Even with COVID, there's so many cool things to do. Restaurants, people are super cool, but. Like my family's from here. I have a lot of friends here, college friends. So it's been cool to get back home and kind of back to my roots and settle down a little bit.
Yeah. After the first few years you had down here, I'm sure you're ready for something a little quieter.
Not quite the spectrum of cities. So, you never know what's going to come next.
Yeah, right. But big things on the horizon for you, right, man? I mean, you started this new venture. I know we haven't really talked a lot about it, so I'm pretty interested to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so obviously my wife, people don't know, my wife swam in 2 Olympics. She was a world record holder, and I actually trained her back in 2016 when she was trying to come back for Rio. She ended up getting a pulmonary embolism, but she was swimming really well. Had some best times, and we just both kind of put our heads together, and it seems like there's a big gap in the strength conditioning world, specifically for training. You look at every other sport, most swim coaches are doing like the strength conditioning, what they call dry land training, which is crazy to think, in another sport, like you can't expect the coach to coach the sport and also be an expert at strength conditioning. And that's essentially what a lot of these guys are trying to do at a high level too. So, there's definitely an opportunity for innovation, I think, in the strength conditioning world of swimming because of that. And, we, with both of our backgrounds, with her background, with all these different coaches and resources, then my training background, we kind of put our heads together and came up with this model that, tries to support athletes both in and outside the pool, with sleep, nutrition, soft tissue work, mobility, strength conditioning, all that stuff. Whereas I don't think a lot of people are addressing like that whole spectrum of needs an athlete has. So that's that's the goal.
Yeah, I remember.
It's going really well. It's been going great. I think there's definitely a need.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm sure there's no. You guys obviously have an indoor facility, right? I'm sure there's no one swimming outdoors in Detroit right now, so that's probably good for you.
Even swim, you're gonna be sliding on ice.
Yeah, but I remember when I was at FAU and I used to train the divers, and we'd have to talk to their coach, and they'd be like, "You gotta kill them," and we're like, "You guys are in season. We're not fucking killing them." Like,
that's kind of the mentality too. It's like just break them down and not even with like a purpose. It's not even, there's not like an outcome that you're looking for. It's just make them tired because we're training hard. And I'm like, well, what are we doing?
So how has that adjustment been for you? I know obviously you have a football background. Now switching over to and you trained hard for that for years and years. And then you're obviously working. You worked with me at Equinox, and you went in onto higher levels of management with them before obviously leaving and starting this. How has that transition been from like football to Gen Pop to now really working with swimmers? So a totally different type of dynamic.
Yeah, it's definitely different. But, what's cool about the swimmers, one, they're very goal oriented, right? Swimmers are all about times and, it's very detail oriented and all this stuff. And the other thing is a lot of them don't do simple stuff that I think people in the fitness world kind of take for granted. Like a foam roller to somebody who hasn't done it ever can go a long way as far as like range of motion goes. So it's cool when you see like these huge changes and like instant results. And the other thing is I just enjoy working with, kids and competitive athletes because again, the results are so measurable and so important to them. It's like rarely do you have someone general pop that those people that care about body comp or being healthy, but rarely is their goal so tangible and are they so focused on it. And also rarely can you say you achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you hit 8% body fat, whatever, like great, but it's still subjective. But if you hit a certain time in the pool, you win an event, nobody can take that away.
So Todd, what are some of the things you're doing now to work with your clients, these athletes, to be able to get them to where they need to be or continue to improve, especially during a time like this where you might not be able to get in front of them? What are some of the things you are doing and some of your team are doing together?
Yeah, so we've been doing a ton of virtual stuff, like, almost all virtual stuff. So we put together an app, which has been super helpful with exercise demos and tracking. And that's been really helpful for coaches, I think, trying to get people on the same page. So if we work with a team, which is usually our model, we would kind of take over a team strength conditioning program. So take it off the coach's plate and provide everything. So, yeah, we've been bringing in the app's been super helpful. We record exercise demos and stuff. So a lot of these kids can just get something in on their own, and we can track it and have a calendar. So I think that's been probably the most important thing through this is just adherence. You can have a pretty bad program, but if you do it regularly, it'll work well. So, creating a calendar form app that was allowing us to plan out, multiple months and work with the coach has been really helpful. But we've definitely had to pivot, right? Like, I actually don't mind the virtual stuff. I think a lot of people have a problem with it. A lot of trainers have a hard time. I think it's helpful, especially with like newer athletes. We're not dealing with somebody that's doing barbell, split jerks. We're learning how to squat, and you can coach somebody really well with the basic mechanics of movement. So it's been actually an easy transition to some of the virtual stuff. And I'd say for a lot of our kids, it's kind of been a lifesaver because they're stuck in, not a lifesaver, but it's been helpful. They're stuck inside. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to focus on besides like school, which is boring. It's hard for them to pay attention with anyway. So at least like something consistent, something consistent they can work towards and make them feel like they're going in a direction somewhat normal, because it's just been a disaster. I think mentally, I think for a lot of these, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, it's been super tough.
So Todd, I want to capitalize on something that you mentioned that was super important. I really love that that's a huge component in your app is you mentioned calendar. And I think a lot of people take that for granted. It's something I preach all the time when it comes with my clients is that if you don't put things in your calendar down and you don't respect your calendar, you're not going to see the success you want. And it's like you said, like I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how sexy the tools are, how juicy they are, how much success you're going to get out of them. It's not going to work unless you put things in your calendar and you actually follow them every single day. That repetition and respecting your calendar so it respects you, and understanding you got to treat it with importance is what's going to give you the results you want. It's funny because you got to see not many other apps out there, other platforms actually make a calendar to the priority. They make all the other stuff the priority, and then sometimes people aren't getting the results, and it's like, why? And it's because, well, if you don't have the calendaring of what you have to do down packed, then how do you expect to see the results? So what made you guys think about that first, and what was it that, and obviously going back to coaching, I'm sure, from those experiences made you realize the calendar is going to be a huge staple, but collectively, what was it that stuck out? Was it because you saw other apps didn't have that, or was it because just you already have been implementing that in your coaching career?
I would say ingrained in my coaching brain, I don't remember where I even saw this graphic, probably 8-10 years ago, and it's been burned in my retinas. And it was this pyramid about like what's the most important thing in training and just adaptation to the human body. There's a pyramid, and the foundation of the pyramid is adherence to a program, right? So like, which is by far the most important piece. And I think people often forget that. So it's like, I think tied into that is like enjoyment, what type of resources, your calendar, what's their motivation level. So, if that's the most important piece, I was like, okay, this needs to be our primary focus. Like, what tools can we give to kind of build that foundation? And then way up towards the top is like things you're talking about, like exercise selection, like biggest pet peeve. Trainers want to argue all day, like single leg deadlift, hex bar deadlift. And it's like, just get them to do the program consistently. Like if you take 6 weeks of a single leg deadlift and compare it to a hex bar deadlift, but they did it consistently or both, the differences are going to be like that much. So why are we wasting 20 minutes arguing about that when, like, let's argue about, how do we motivate a client? How do we get them to do the calendar consistently?
Get people to do shit.
Rarely a conversation now, like very rarely a conversation, especially in education of training.
So how do you get people to, continue that adherence? Are there any conversations that you try to have with them or expectations that you try to set with them right away?
Yeah. I mean, just yell at them, just fear-based.
I know you're kind of a big guy. It's like, you want me to fucking crush you?
I think, obviously, I'm sure everybody does this, but a pretty long, detailed discussion about their goals, right? Long-term goals, short-term goals. Again, when it's a sport, it's a lot easier to connect the dots, way easier to connect the dots. But I think one thing that we've done to just kind of shows our beliefs is, we don't do any long-term subscriptions. It's always month to month. Like, we don't want to hold anybody hostage. And for that reason, like, if somebody's not going to be compliant, we'll be honest with them and be like, if this isn't, working out, if you're not going to do this consistently, like, let's not waste each other's time. Not in those words, but I think you need to regather yourself, regroup, think about, how important these goals are, and we can revisit things. But at the end of the day, like, this has to be important to you, and we'll be here to kind of cater, or we'll facilitate the program, facilitate your success, but we can't make you motivated. We can do certain things to help, but it's got to be there.
Yeah, no, 100%. If it doesn't really come from a real why behind it, you'll fizzle out eventually. It might be a month, it might be 2 months, it might be 4 months, but you'll give up eventually if you're not fully committed into what you're doing. Because the consistency, the adherence is the hardest fucking part. It's the hardest part.
So far.
I get clients all the time, and I mean, I love doing simple shit. Nothing makes me happier than when I see clients just doing lunges or like goblet squats. Yeah. My client's like, I want to do something fun. I'm like, what's going to be fun? You doing this for the next 5 weeks. Like, that's going to be super fun for me to see that you can just do a goblet squat for 5 weeks. And then we'll start talking about like getting into.
Well, that's the thing. I think too many people, have a problem just taking action. And this is just not just in fitness, but in every other aspect of their life. People just have a big problem in scheduling things in, having the right mindset in place, and actually freaking taking action into what they need to do. And it's funny because those are those components that you need to do anything, whether it's health, fitness, business, build a relationship, build a friendship. It's just take action and plug it in time-wise so you can actually get it done. So what are some of the coaching methods that you take your clients or your athletes to actually, put these things in? Do you have a method on top of some of the stuff we talked about, like when you coach them through these issues, if they're telling you, hey, like, I didn't show up, or I haven't been able to schedule it, I'm not taking the action on it? What are some of those conversations look like in depth?
Yeah, I would say it definitely depends on the age of the athlete. Like, if we have someone that's younger, the parent might be involved, but I think really we're trying to strip it down is minuscule as we can when it comes down to like problem solving, right? So, if somebody isn't getting it done, if they're not, let's say, like, we'll set these weekly goals. Let's say it's 10 minutes of foam rolling post practice, or just to throw it out there. If that's not getting done, trying to strip it down, to the most minuscule level that you can of why that's not happening. Like, is it not convenient? Like, where are they foam rolling? Do they have a foam roller? Do they like their foam roller? Is a foam roller too hard? Trying to figure out, like, what's that root cause? Because so often, like, you can convince yourself of an excuse, or you tell yourself you're going to do it. They'll tell you you'll do it this week. So it's almost like, okay, let's figure out what's the root cause here. Then we're almost like a prove me wrong mentality of, okay, you said you're going to do this. This is your goal. Let's see what you got, right? And if not, we're going to revisit it. But kids are very adaptable, right? Young athletes are very adaptable. So, some of these conversations work extremely well. They've never been motivationally interviewed before. So it's very useful when you can have like these raw, honest conversations. They're not used to being sold on things. They're so, out there and just ready to rock that usually we haven't had to have a ton of those conversations, to be honest. And the other thing that's weird, now that I'm so used to be on the business and sales side with Equinox and everything, a lot of these athletes are coming to us. So it's cool to get like a hungry group of athletes. So we can almost throw everything we want at them. It's not even as much from a lot of them. It's not even like behavior change, implementing small changes over time. It's almost like, give me more. Like they're drinking from a fire hose, and it's cool because a lot of them can handle it just because their motivation levels are so high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you know from your football career, like when I was in high school, you could have told me to wake up at 3 a.m. and go to the gym to do conditioning. I would have fucking been there at 2:45. You know, I've been ready. I've been doing like high knees outside the door, like ready to go. Like, okay, I gotta warm up.
Explode back in the day and be ready to go.
5 scoops, man, just like heart beating through the chest. That original formula.
Crazy. You remember that stuff? Like it was like you would like put in a shaker and it would like blow the cap off.
That was no explode. If you shook it too hard, you had to stir it.
No explode.
Yeah.
My brain would explode. I think that would shake my stomach and then it would just blow up.
We had a friend. I remember when I was working at Bally's. We had a coach there. He used that, and he was crazy. He mixed that shit with Red Bull, and he started almost having a heart attack. And I was like, what the I'm telling you.
I mean, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I'm pretty sure I was having heart palpitations, like taking that in high school.
Speaking of like that, I was doing a sleep coaching session with somebody the other day. I won't mention any names, but they would be fine if I told. But they were like, I can't sleep. Like, what can I do? I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, okay, what time are you working out? And he's like, between 2 and 4. I'm like, okay, how much you have caffeine before you work out? He's like, yeah, I have 2 Monster Zeros and 2 scoops of pre-workout.
What? Jesus Christ.
Like,
Jesus Christ. How do you ever sleep?
Like, dude, that's got to be 700 milligrams.
Yeah.
I think that's I think that's
you might as well just get an IV and streamline Starbucks into your.
I'm like, what time are you going to? He's like, what time are you trying to go to bed? He's like 10. I'm like, dude, you still have a solid 400 milligrams.
Yeah.
And then he like stopped it one day and he's like, I feel so much better. I slept like a baby. I'm like, well, no shit.
Yeah, because you're actually tired. Like,
tired.
Yeah.
You know what it feels to be
tired. I know it's been a while since I've seen you in person, but how did you get into sleep coaching? I've always been kind of curious. I know I've never asked you.
Yeah. I think that what really got me interested, obviously Equinox works with Dr. Jennifer Martin in UCLA, and they do a ton of education. So that definitely like started the ball rolling. And then I think, I've been wearing a Whoop for probably 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. So I think just like starting to get interested in that. And then, just diving in more and more studies and more stuff coming out on just the importance of that. And again, kind of like what I was talking about with the adherence of a program, sleep is one of the few things that you can't really like manipulate or you want to say like biohack and get away with having less of, right? Like, so exercise, there's so many like things you can manipulate, like intensity, like the amount of time, the weight, the rest, different types, cardio, strength. There's a million things you can kind of like, you can get the minimum effective dose basically. But when it comes to sleep, like, there's no overcoming that, and that's going to cascade into like everything in your life. It's kind of like Titanic when like they have like the walls like goes over the next thing. It's like that. So when you start to think about it, it's like, why is this not more of a focus? And now I think people are really catching on. But like if that's not in a good place, like how do you expect anything else to be in a good place in your life? It's all gonna eventually start crumbling down, just because the effect on the brain chemistry and, physiologically, everything that's going on when you're sleeping, it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that I've struggled with over the years too. I got a quick question for you. I have one of those. It's probably the one day I'm not wearing it. I wear one of those Aura rings. You probably know better than me. What are the comparisons between the two, between like Whoop and Aura ring? Because obviously they're very different. Like Whoop deals more with like the actual workout recovery side of things and sleep, and I feel like Aura ring is more like readiness and sleep.
They're actually like very similar in like what they are trying to do. So like Whoop has readiness, just like Aura ring. I would say Whoop is probably a little more user friendly. Like the data is really easy to interpret. So if I had somebody that was like didn't really know what they're talking about, new into fitness and not great at like biometrics, Whoop would be the way to go, because it's like recovery score, strain score, that's pretty much all you got to worry about. It's really easy to digest. The Aura ring has some more data points, like they record body temperature, as you know, they record a little bit more. But what's crazy is when they do side-by-side comparisons, people will do stuff where they wear a Whoop on one hand, Aura ring, like the HRV measurements for both are like all over the place.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
So there's some benefits of both. Like Aura Ring's probably more detail oriented because it does body temperature, and then the other thing it does is a continuous HRV measurement throughout the night, so you can pinpoint any time throughout the night what your HRV is. Whereas Whoop uses like your last deep sleep cycle to determine your HRV for the day, which is probably pretty good, but I'd like to see the whole night, to be honest. So there's some discrepancies there. From what I've gathered, I think the heart rate for a workout's a little more accurate in Whoop, but super close. I just don't like wearing a ring, to be honest. That's the only reason I don't wear it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that's one of the reasons why I got it. It was like I can't wear another fucking strap on my wrist. Like I look like the dude wearing 2 watches, and I just can't. I can't have that happen.
So
you're in Miami, so you gotta have a Rolex on one wrist.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
No, I got like a fake Breitling that one of my clients got me that looks like a real thing, and I just rock around with that. My client's like, bro, who gave you that Breitling? I'm like, oh, one of my clients are like, what the fuck, man? That's like $8,000. I'm like, yeah, it's really 80.
So are there any other products out there that would compete with those that you would want to name out?
Not that I would say those are definitely leading the pack. And the other cool thing, I think the coolest thing with Whoop, and I think that you'll see this probably over the next 5 years, they just did a huge, I sound like I work for Whoop. I didn't know.
Hashtag ad, hashtag sponsor.
Drop Todd's affiliate link. Get 20%
We'll include it in the
now.
description.
The cool thing, they just raised a ton of money because, like, in order to see your data, you have to connect to the app and upload the data to the app. So they're collecting tons of data, but, alcohol, like COVID stuff. They've even, they pinpointed how to kind of predict if you have COVID before even some of the testing with respiratory rates. So
yeah, I opted into the Aura one. Aura ran like a study at the beginning of COVID. I opted in through the whole thing. That was interesting.
Super cool. So I think that the data side of it is going to be super powerful because you have a metadata of all these active people, exact gender, age, all these different metadata analysis you can do. So I think once they gather a ton of that, I think it's going to be really powerful, and I think we'll probably get some good insight to things that we didn't realize with, like, in regards to sleep, caffeine, medications, things like that.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest things? Like, let's say for example, I mean, maybe not the client that you were talking about, because he's just streamlining Red Bull into his body, but for the normal person who just maybe works a 9 to 5, has a couple kids, or like is stressed out, isn't really sleeping a lot, what are some super helpful tips that you think people can implement right away to improve their sleep?
I mean, I'll try not to be too cliche because people have heard a lot of these, but I would say the most important thing for sure is just consistency in the sleep, like your bedtime and your wake up time. Rule of thumb, like, try to keep it within 2 hours, because people just ruin themselves on the weekend. They, even if it's not like, you're not going out and drinking or something, like, you can give yourself legit, jet lag, weekend jet lag from waking up too late, and kind of reset your circadian rhythm. So, like, that's the most important thing. I think one of the things that people don't think about, and then we run into coaching issues with people all the time, is drinking water too late in the night. Like, people have a ton of liquids at dinner and stuff, and you're getting up 2-3 times to pee. And, a lot of times sleep issues are more psychological. So people are dealing with anxiety, ruminating thoughts, all this stuff. So if you wake up to pee, you're almost giving yourself an opportunity to start, like, thinking about things, right? So by dialing that back, hydrating earlier in the day, give your mind the least amount of opportunities to run away from itself and become consumed with something. So that's usually something that's helpful that people don't often think about.
Yeah, not something I really thought
about. I gotta throw it out there. How does sex play a role in that?
In sleep in general?
Yeah.
It can be helpful. I mean, there's definitely some hormone production that's useful, but it's so inconsistent person to person, because, like, at the same time, it depends on how strenuous it is. It's just, heart rates, like,
very strenuous.
How good
very
are you at
strenuous,
sex, guys?
Very strenuous. The highest strain on Whoop.
Well, Whoop is gonna be like, Josh's
Putting
data
holes in the
information.
drywall.
Based on what Josh's saying, he's gonna have to be a morning sex type.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're not gonna fall asleep if it's past noon with all that aggression.
Yeah, listen, I definitely am more of a morning sex. Past 5 p.m., my brain doesn't work. Like I definitely don't want to have sex.
Well,
with
you
just
mentioned
like,
those stories. You wake up in the middle of the night. And
I'm a big
middle of
morning
the
sex
night.
guy. Like 5:30 to 7 a.m. That's like when I need to get it
Prime
in,
time?
so I can start the day off right. You know.
That's the tone.
So
Yeah.
how about with athletes? You know, you've always heard that they're saying that don't have sex before games. You know that whole you've heard that saying.
Not Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson used to smash before a fight.
How accurate is that?
Yeah, that's actually, they did some studies on that, and that's been proven to be wrong. Actually, I mean, the only way that'd be possible if it was like literally like in the tunnel. Okay, run out and play a game. You know, like 30.
Which would be a little awkward. Yeah,
Or you just go wild.
probably
like
having
that.
sex with your teammates.
Well, I mean, with COVID, there's so many restrictions. There might not be anybody there, but
Right.
yeah. So like that's completely been disproven. There's actually some studies that show it could help, which is ironic.
Yeah.
So,
It always blows my mind when I see those people on like Instagram and stuff. They're like, don't masturbate. Like your cum is your power. Like it brings you the testosterone. I'm like, listen, I'm going to power someone right through the face if I don't take care of myself every now
Who
and
are you
then.
talking about?
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. There's a kid that's in one of our engagement groups. I'm just like, I can't do it. There's no way he's going to listen to this podcast, so we're good.
He's totally gonna listen now.
Yeah, I hope. I hope. At least he knows.
Too funny, man. Too funny. But it's just kind of crazy to think like how important and how these different variables play a different role when it comes to the sleep aspect of things and recovery and performance and how they all intertwine together. So if you had to pick one thing out of everything when it comes to, you know, just living a more optimal life and whether you're a normal individual or you're an athlete, what would you say is the number one thing people should work on first before, you know, any of the other healthier components?
I mean, I think I would shoot for sleep. You know, I would like you were saying, like your calendar, like you got to schedule. Like, all right, so if 7 hours is the minimum, like let's schedule that in to start my day. All right, so that's non-negotiable. Put that in there, and then work everything else around that. Like that has to be a priority because if you fit everything else in first and then try to shove your sleep in there, it's not going to work. So you kind of got to work yourself backwards throughout the day, like you were saying. Make that a priority, and I think you'll feel a lot better. I would venture to say, you know, people who are having a hard time not getting to the gym, maybe they're overweight, just kind of all in all struggling with health and wellness. Before you try to like get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym, I bet if you took care of your sleep, it would cascade into the other things. I bet working out would get easier. I bet you'd be more motivated. You'd probably make healthier food decisions. That's been proven for sure. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that's a good starting point. I don't think it needs to be like balls to the wall in order to make a change. Like it doesn't have to start with exercise and sweating and all this like hardcore commitment. I think committing to scheduling your sleep, like your wake up time and your sleep time on the weekends, maybe could be a start, you know, just getting those consistent. So
what would you,
but rarely is someone going to jump into that.
So what would you say is a sweet spot for sleep? For everybody. I know everybody's different, but I know in the sleep realm, there's usually that, you know, that amount of time you do want to get. Yeah,
I mean, so pretty recognized across all medical boards, like 7 hours is the minimum before it starts being detrimental. So like that's like the absolute least amount you can get before you start having negative effects, which is a pretty good amount of sleep when you're thinking about it.
It's a long time.
That's accepted. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I think the standard deviation, like the median or mean is usually right around, you know, 8 hours, you know, which we've heard for a while, but, you know, some people are like, oh, I'm good at, you know, 6 hours, 5.5. And it's like, it's such a small percentage of the population that's actually functioning optimally at 5.5. Like there's a big difference between getting used to functioning in 5.5 hours and optimally functioning at 5.5 hours. And unfortunately, we don't usually see the residual effects of that until, you know, 60, 65, 70, and we start getting some neurodegenerative diseases and stuff like that because the differences in performance might be so small day to day that they don't even recognize it, or they might be so used to being underslept that they don't even recognize the changes.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say like in my early 20s, I didn't, you know, I couldn't tell the difference between 7 and 5 hours. Now,
Yeah.
Now, like
Yeah.
if I don't get at least 8, like it is fucking. I mean, he'll tell you. I'm like sitting here at the desk, like,
Yeah, you were savage back in the day, bro.
dude. I mean, I used to take those, and I'd like to dive into this too. I used to take like those quick 30-minute naps in the back, like hallway at Equinox, and those saved me, you know. But I can't do that shit anymore, man. It's like I got too many gray hairs already to be fucking
Barely
staying
sleep, strenuous sex doesn't work.
Yeah, well, occasional strenuous sex. We'll throw that out there as like a.
Yeah, that's like once a year for him. I think.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there, Josh likes strenuous sex.
Yeah. Aggressive, very aggressive.
Aggressive.
Short duration, but very
Grabbing
aggressive.
your wrists, grabbing your ankles.
It's like a play on the goal line. It doesn't last very long, but it's very powerful towards the end result I'm looking for.
So there's something that Josh brought up, and I want to get your take on it. Naps. I know there's always I've heard, too long of a nap is not good, too short, not good either. So what's the sweet spot for a nap, and how should people approach naps to actually get into a nap and then get themselves out of it?
I mean, a sweet spot for legitimate recovery, like from a top to bottom neurological perspective, physical perspective, 90 minutes is usually that's a full REM cycle, right? So that would be the sweet spot. Now that's assuming your body is like transitioning between all the REM cycles the exact same, or like all the cycles of sleep the exact same. So that's like ideal world, 90 minutes. But, we usually recommend either 20 minutes, where that's mostly like a psychological boost. You might feel better. It's not going to be a ton like of a regeneration perspective, but 20 minutes, boom, feel better, quick nap, or 90 minutes. That's usually the sweet spot. And, there's nothing negative about sleeping longer than that. It's just, if it starts to affect what time you go to bed at night, that's when you start running into issues. So sometimes people are super tired and you're like, should I take a nap? And the answer might be no, if it's going to affect your sleep at night, because if you can't sleep for 3-4 hours at night, like that is going to carry over 2, 3, 4 days when it comes to your circadian rhythm. So you're better off, powering through, being a little tired throughout the afternoon if you need a nap, or you have one bad night of sleep sometimes, than affecting 3-4 nights of sleep because you go to bed super late.
So Todd, what's your biggest piece of advice for all these travelers, or that their whole circadian rhythm's thrown off because of the time differences?
Yeah.
How do you approach that? How do you work with people like that? How do you really just reset them quickly?
It's tough, man. I talked to the Michigan State football team this summer about this stuff, and then I worked with them a little bit and scheduling their stuff based on game times, right? So like if it was a night game, it was a morning game, 3:30 game, very similar to traveling. I think the best thing you could do, and it depends on how much control you have over what time you go to bed, like what your job is, but if you can gradually get yourself closer to those time zones over the week, like if you're going to travel, that's probably a really good thing, especially if it's like West Coast to East Coast, where it's only a few hours, 3 hours, start, moving your wake up time and your sleep time a couple, 15, 30 minutes each night to try to get more adjusted. The other thing that's useful is when you get off the plane, a cold shower can reduce some of the inflammation right away. And then also eating consistently with like when you eat throughout the week. So if you eat at 6 p.m. and you normally go to bed at 9, like eat 3 hours before you want to go to bed in whatever time zone you're in. So that can help like your circadian kind of kick into gear, because all those things work together.
Okay.
Yeah. Really interesting.
How I kind of want to jump back to the nap thing for a second, because I try to do the 20. I can't do the 90-minute nap. I can do the 20-minute nap, but it's not. I don't fall asleep. It's just like I close my eyes and try not to think of any thought. Try not to think any thoughts.
If you're having strenuous sex, I wouldn't think you're.
Do people actually fall asleep for like just fall asleep like that in 20 minutes? They wake up.
People can fall asleep like in a minute. It's wild.
I can't.
Usually those people are chronically underslept, like they're super tired.
Yeah, but I'm not weird, right? Like that's really, I want to make sure that, not in this sense, in every other aspect of my life, super, super strange. I'm out there, but is that kind of what that 20-minute power nap is for? Is just to kind of like settle everything down?
Yeah. You'll see too, though, if you had a lot of like usually, I don't know if this is your case, people will have a ton of caffeine when they're super tired and they need a nap. So sometimes that'll happen when you try to take a nap, but you're crushing caffeine, where like physically you're like exhausted and you want to go to sleep, but you know, you have all this dopamine and stuff that's kicking from the caffeine that you're not going to let you fall asleep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that could be it too. Like if you were completely, you know, no caffeine, no stimulants, that tired, like at Equinox in the back room, I bet you'd be able to fall asleep pretty quick.
You could have been fucking rolling a vacuum right next to my ear. I would have passed out. The lights were still on. It's hot as fuck back there. I'm like, I don't care.
You said remember you told us a story yesterday how you would get thrown in the snow, you would get carried out.
Oh yeah, that was different though. That was when I was a child. My stepdad was a dick. Nah, Todd used to catch me all the time, bro. Go get out of the yoga room. Go back in that hallway. Like,
I didn't really care. Like some people would get mad if like trainers were sleeping. I'm like, well, you can't not sleep.
Like I'm here at 5 a.m. I don't leave till 9 at night. Like, what would you like me to do? You know?
Yeah.
So Todd, what are your best practices? Either taking a nap or when you're getting ready to go to sleep. You know, you hear different things all the time. But what are your best practices to get ready to go to sleep? What does that look like, and what should everybody kind of model off of?
Yeah, that's tough. Everyone's different, right? So, you know, whatever works for you, but consistency is the best thing, right? There are a lot of studies on blue light, you know, obviously not having screens, blue light. There's good studies on drinking a warm drink before bed can be helpful in falling asleep. There's good studies on temperature, right? Like a lot of people sleep with it too warm, you know, anywhere from, you know, like 65, 66 is like the sweet spot for sleeping temperature, which is pretty cold.
I love that.
So that can be useful. So I think creating a routine that's not too long and it doesn't stress you out. One of the worst things you can do is almost like ignorance is bliss. A lot of people know how important sleep is. So they start thinking about it and then they can't fall asleep because they're like, oh my God, I can't sleep. And then they just go into like this tizzy. Like, so, you know, it's okay if you can't sleep. Like you'll be fine. You'll be fine one night. Like if you can't sleep, no big deal. Don't try to force yourself to go to sleep if you're not tired. That will never work, like ever. Mm-hmm. They actually did studies on like counting sheep, and you actually stay awake longer when you count sheep because you're just focused on falling asleep basically. And that's the only thing you're thinking about, you know? So yeah, I think that'd be the main thing. Like pick a routine that's consistent. Could be a shower. There's not, you know, it could be anything, but something that you enjoy, something that's relaxing. There's no stress. And then, yeah, like those little tweaks can help. Like the temperature thing definitely helps with REM sleep. I would suggest that.
How about white noise?
It's person to person, you know, like there's not a ton of data that's supporting that it's a good thing, but it's nothing saying it's bad. So if that's something that you like, then I would go for it. If not, you know, it's just depends person to person.
I've noticed it's like for our little one, you know, the baby, put some white noise, you know, or those lullabies. Next, you know, me and Jenny fall asleep, and then the thing is, I've noticed it puts me to sleep, but then I freaking wake up in the middle, and I'm like, shit, this white noise is annoying. Turn that shit off.
Yeah, I would lean more towards like the less is more as far as silence goes. Like they've even shown studies where, you know, if your alarm clock has a bright light, that can disrupt REM sleep in some sense. So little things can really affect your sleep. It's pretty wild.
What's your take on sleep medication? Because I mean, and you hear it a lot. You know better than anyone down here, right? Everyone fucking is on, you know, Ambien or something, and you know, I try to explain to people like, yeah, they're great bridges, but like you shouldn't be on Ambien for fucking 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so obviously I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, I'm talking on my ass, but.
Yeah. There are no sleep drugs that are not going to have an effect on your REM sleep and your natural sleep cycles. Like there's not one, and usually it's not a good effect. But people who have legitimate issues,
right,
absolutely need that stuff. But it's like I think a lot of people it's a quick fix, right? It's like I can't sleep. Well, it's like what measures have you taken? Like, you know, now people are starting to jump on board, but before, I would say 5 years ago, there wasn't even like action steps to work on your sleep. It was just like, I can't sleep. And it's like, well, have you even thought about why you can't sleep, or you're just going to jump on some medication? So, you know, I think hopefully it's getting more holistic, but yeah, I mean, and then you're walking into a dangerous cycle there when you start talking about sleep medications, because it's very difficult to get off those, both physically and psychologically usually. Like, for example, you know, like Benadryl or like, you know, ZQuil is non-habit forming physically, But psychologically, that doesn't mean you're not going to become addicted to it, because you're not going to be able to fall asleep from every night without having it. So I think that it's a slippery slope. And I think people really need to work with docs and discuss what the reasons are, and explore all options before they enter that world, because it's often, from my experience, a hard world to get out of. Yeah. It just becomes this dosage and different prescription, different drugs over a course of decades, and can be really detrimental, I think, long term for brain health.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you're spot on too. You know, it's always, every time I hear, you know, one of my clients talking about, oh, I took a pill and I fell asleep last night. It's like, okay, but you know, did you try? Were you watching TV? Were your lights on?
Yeah.
Like, how high was that temperature?
How old is your mattress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And were you, it's like, were you sleeping or were you sedated? Because from your brain's perspective, there's a huge difference between those two.
And a lot of the time they wake up and they're like, man, I'm fucking exhausted. I'm like, so you're taking something to help you sleep, but it's making you more tired when you wake up. Like, doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
You might as well just be tired from not sleeping. It's probably better. At least you're not implementing a foreign substance into your body.
Right.
So going into now, because this just made me think, now going into deeper thought, are there certain resting and sleeping like positions that are going to be way better than others? Should be, I know you hear hugging a pillow in the arm, or
don't tell me
sideways,
sleeping on my stomach is bad for me, because I'll never
you know
fucking sleep any other way.
Yeah, that's what's tough. It's like, I feel most people have a really hard time adjusting what position they sleep in. There are some positions for people with sleep apnea and stuff that are different, but you know what's wild is they did a study and they linked personality types, like certain personality traits, to certain sleeping positions, like pretty solid correlations between the two.
No wonder.
Sleeping on your, do you remember them? Because I'm pretty interested to see if these align with me, and I have a strong inclination that they're gonna, and it's gonna be bad.
Sleeping on your stomach is like super soft and just like not very intelligent. No, I don't remember what they are, but we should look it up, because I sleep on my stomach too, so whatever that means.
I sleep sideways.
Probably that we're fucking savages, dude, and that's why Mendez sleeps on his side.
It's probably actually the opposite of that.
Yeah. I know. I just wake up and like, fuck, I should have put a pillow under my under my hips, like my back. Yeah. But if I try to sleep on my stomach, it's like a fucking deer in the headlights. If I try to sleep on my back, like it's impossible. You might as well just be screaming in my ear the whole time, playing Metallica.
I feel like I'm in a casket.
Yeah. I can't. I gotta be on my stomach. Fuck it. Problem is, it fucks up my shoulder.
That's what fucks up the shoulder.
It's
I know it's tough, right? My shit always just goes to sleep. That's the worst part. Is like when my fucking arm goes to sleep. Yeah, I'm like waking up. I'm like, I gotta grab my toothbrush. I can't grab my toothbrush. I can't fucking turn the faucet on.
Sometimes where I'm like, my arm's never gonna come back awake. Like, I have like structural damage to the arteries in my arm.
No, the problem now with the sleep is with our little one in between. Geez, she'll be vertical and then she ends up horizontal, kicking us in the face. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me why I'm not gonna have kids.
So Todd, overall, with all these components that we talked, I know we talked very heavily about sleep, obviously calendaring, but with everything that you do, and like you said, you guys been working on a new program and structure. When you're working with your clients and athletes, what are the main components that you focus on first, and how do you break it down to the point where it's simple to understand, easy to digest? Because, like you said, the more information and through the years that we go, we're learning more and more every single time about sleep in deeper detail, about nutrition in deeper detail, about working out in deeper detail. It could be overwhelming for both the coach and the client. How do you best put it so that way it's both of you succeed together and be able to just drive the overall message across? How does that look like for you, and how do you break that down for your client?
Yeah, man, that's a tough question. I think the biggest thing is assessing the need. I would say the biggest thing is we pick one thing to focus on, right? So we pick a monthly focus. So when we talk to a team, we talk to the coach, we get a good feel for like what the team needs, what the team's like, what the personalities are like, and we'll pick a singular focus, whether it be sleep, nutrition, mindset. Like we had a we had a focus with the team that was like mindset during COVID, all these different things. So I think, repetition is powerful, and then just focusing on one thing. Like, I even think that having like, some people will have like a strength goal, nutrition goal, regen goal. I even think that that's overkill to some extent. I think that that's too much. So, really when it comes down to implementing new stuff, like only picking one thing, and making it very clear, like what the outcome is that you want to, or what the outcome is that you want. Like a lot of times we get so process oriented, we implement all these things, but like when it comes down to an athlete, okay, this is the outcome we want. How do we connect it to this one singular thing? And it's going to drive the consistency, like you said. But I think oftentimes we get bogged down with too many things. Mm-hmm. I think people are doing a lot of good things on their own. They're probably in a pretty good place, and just add one at a time and knock them down, as opposed to trying to add 6 at once.
And then that's where I was going to say that's where you see them people actually don't start doing something, or they actually, along the way they give up, because it's just like, man, that's why sometimes too much information is not good information. Sometimes you got to just start knowing like, hey, this is good enough right now, or this is just doing this alone is going to drive the agenda forward. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you're coaching new trainers up, when you're teaching trainers how to train people, it's like, you start learning all these crazy exercises, when I wish when I would go back, like, just teach me the mechanics of a squat, like for like 3 months, right? And just knock that out in detail, and then move on to the next thing, master the next movement. Because, I learned 10% of 25 movements, and I felt like I didn't know anything because I wasn't mastering anything. So it's kind of like that, instead of spreading out all your bandwidth, knock out one thing and then move on to the next.
Kind of sounds like our conversations we used to have in the PTM room at Equinox, man. It's just like, why aren't people just fucking squatting and deadlifting and doing lunges? Like,
I know.
Why is this so hard? Like, you hit every hammer strength machine in the gym, but your client can't squat onto a box.
Oh, it's crazy. It's so wild, like how cultural a gym is. Like, when you used to manage different gyms, like, you go to one gym and you got people like, in South Beach, we were, barbells, deadlifts, back squats, bench press. And then I would say, you go to another gym like Coral Gables, and it was very like functional vipers, all this stuff. And it's like crazy how very similar education models, but like the culture of
20 minutes away.
Yeah. 20 minutes away, same company, same education pretty much.
Yeah.
And
completely different ends of the spectrum.
Wow. Yeah.
It's so crazy though. It's so true, and that's why you see everybody in any aspect of what you're in. You see tribes all the time, and we talked about that. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, even like the inter battles that we have, like, you guys are doing too much bodybuilding. Yeah. It's like, bro, like, if I don't do more bodybuilding, like, I'm not gonna have fucking clients to train. Like, that's great that you can swing around a 24 kilo Viper. Like, if I grabbed a 6 kilo Viper, my clients can be like, I'm fucking out of here for the day. Like, you can mail it in, man.
So, like, what are we gonna do? Like, are we gonna lean on that between sets, or like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah. They're like, okay, great. So, like, how am I gonna use that for my chest? Like, it's not for that.
For sure. For sure.
No, it's crazy. I mean, how big of a difference was it for you going from down here? I mean, you were obviously at South Beach for a while to then going up to New York. Because I mean, it's got to be a completely different dynamic.
Yeah. I would say, it was a way different. I think South Beach was tough, man. Like, you think about like staffing a gym in South Beach. It's like, okay, you're going to hire mostly 20 to 30-year-olds, right? If you're 20 to 30, you didn't go to school down there because there's not a ton of colleges, right? So most of the kids who went to school down there is more Coral Gables area. Mm-hmm. So it was like, why are you in South Beach at that age? It's probably not a career-oriented goal.
Yeah.
So that was super tough. So I would say New York, Chicago was probably like, you get some people who are really dedicated to the craft, really well educated, because one,
there's nothing else to do.
There's a ton of schools around there, right? So you get a big city, and also, because Equinox's price point doesn't change city to city, you could make a ton of money being a Tier X coach or whatever. So you get you recruit some good talent. Now you transfer that over to New York, cost of living, it is way different. So it wasn't as, I would say, highly regarded as Chicago, because, man, if you're a Tier X coach in Chicago, you're cranking 160 sessions, you're making bank and you're making a really good living. and it's very like well structured, and you come in, you do your thing, you know exactly what you do. New York was a lot more turnover, not a lot, but just different. Like there was tons of equinoxes, tons of openings. So I think you had to take a little bit more risk when it came to hiring, and I would say because of the turnover, a little less brand loyalty than like Chicago.
So wouldn't that put a harder job on the managers too? Because you're constantly now have to reamp and bring new people and constantly do new trainings over and over again instead of just reinforcing what you have already, right?
Sure. Yeah, it was hard. I think that it was hard. I had challenges because I really like try to treat teams like a sports team and make people part of something special and really strive to be a quality team top to bottom. That was kind of like my motivation tactic, and care about people. And there was just a lot of turnover, and because of that, it made it tough. And the other thing that was tough there in New York was, people will pay $200-$250 for a private session cash. Like people, it's crazy.
They don't care. Yeah.
So no. So that was tough to compete with. People, deep pockets, and it's hard to stop people from doing privates. There's buildings everywhere. People willing to pay. It was just a different culture there for sure.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever had like a really high tier client come down from New York, and he was training at a boutique gym. I think like Soho Strength Lab or something.
Yeah.
And he came down here and he's like, all right, so like what, I was already on my own. He's like, what are your rates? I told him, he's like, oh, he didn't hesitate. He's like, all right, 50 sessions. I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And so a couple weeks went by. I was like, but like, how much were you paying there? He's like $350 a session. I'm like, like I just left like $7,000 on the table. Yep.
It's wild. Like, but it's a different world. You can charge anything there.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to California too, right?
Yeah. I haven't spent as much time out west, but that's what I hear. I know that I think it's a little easier in New York because everything's so close, as far as logistics go for trainers.
There's like 20 million people.
Yeah. I will say though, New York though, like, people are smart, right? Like the guys that are willing to pay that amount of money, or girls, they usually, they're not just going to go with anybody. Like they'll question you and stuff. They'll push you on. New Yorkers are. They're not going to just like lay down and say, okay, but you got to be able to hold your own for sure.
Yeah. How have you been able to kind of take some of the stuff that you've learned there and implement it into, how you're staffing the new business?
Yeah. I think that, after being at all these different places, I would say I value attitude over anything, really. Like if somebody, first off, like if you're selling something, training, no one wants to be around someone that's in a bad mood, right? If people are happy, they're probably going to be more successful. So I value someone that's going to have a good attitude and work hard, and you can teach them things over knowledge any day of the week, right? Because at the end of the day, like, life's too short to be in a bad mood and work with people you don't want to be around. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the main thing. It's just give me someone that's willing to learn, that works hard, is in a good mood, good attitude. I'll take that any day of the week.
Josh, how were you with those kind of clients?
Oh, he'll tell you. He'll tell. Listen, I question it all the time when I have to come in here with this motherfucker. So, it's always like a battle between like, oh, should I go in today? Should I not? I guess I gotta go in. But man, we're almost at an hour here. I just want to say, I definitely wouldn't be where I am on my. I mean, you fucking hired me at Equinox, so I have a lot to thank you for. And I mean, you'll be the first person to admit, you told me 1,000 times, like, you were a stubborn fucking dumbass, who had to be broken down over the years and retaught, and it's because of you, you, Kavan, a couple other good trainers who were there, that I really am who I am today, and I understand that, while you got to take things seriously, it, doesn't have to be like a fucking sports session all the time. And, you're really the person that taught me that. And that was a big pivotal moment in my career. So, I just want to say thank you, now that we have you on the podcast to shine some light on the fact that I wouldn't be sitting here bitching at him all the time if it weren't for you,
Yeah.
So thanks, Todd.
It's been really cool to see everything you guys have been doing. And like, from a distance, I wish I was a little closer sometimes, but it's been really cool because I've got to see, things progress throughout the years thanks to social media.
Yeah.
And
Well, next time you're in Miami, hopefully
get that
sometime
shit live.
soon, we'll
Dude,
have
I
you in
was
the
trying to
studio.
come down for New Year's.
Thank God
I'm
you
getting
didn't,
the
man. It
best.
was a shit show. It was a shit show.
Yeah, so maybe in the spring or something.
Yeah.
Definitely let us know. We'll make another one and we'll have it live.
Yeah, we got to come up to D-Town too at some point. I don't
Oh,
know. I guess the only reason we
Not
come
in the
there is to
cold,
see you,
but-
though. But we'll come up. Yeah, maybe in the summertime.
Go to Tigers game. What else is
Yeah,
here?
that's true.
We'll find some stuff to do.
Yeah, we go to Canada. Canada's right there, right? We go to Canada. I don't know
Yeah,
if there's
Windsor.
anything on the
Yeah,
other
we're-
side of the border there, but
No, Windsor's wild,
That's what I hear.
crazy.
yeah, I've never been to Windsor. Only like the eastern part of Ontario. So I think that'd be fun.
There we go. And then we got our trip planned out.
Yeah, for sure. How can people reach out to you? What's the best place to find you, and what's the website for the facility?
Website's synergydryland.com, and then just on Instagram, usually I check my DMs. Todd Anderson 42 _. Hit
Awesome.
me up.
There we go.
Perfect.
Well, I'm going to hit you up with some quick little questions that we always do at the end.
Don't embarrass me.
All right. I'll try.
All right. Question number 1. Well, since you mentioned already.
Ah, fuck. Here we go.
What was the hardest thing, or not the hardest thing, but what was the most aggravating thing that Josh would do at Equinox when you were his boss?
How long do you got?
Oh, man. What's an aggravating thing? It's tough. I think probably wearing a dry fit. Didn't you used to wear a dry fit to work out all the time, or no?
Yeah. I used to, those tights, those running tights that you bought me.
The
I still
Nike-
have
Nike
those.
dry
I
fits?
still have
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
Yeah. He bet me that I wouldn't wear these tights if he bought them for my birthday. I wore that every Friday.
This was, to be fair, this was also before like tights were like as
Cool.
socially
Yeah,
acceptable
no.
as they are now.
Yeah.
And
And
like, it was weird.
and we're both straight in a very gay gym. So, but it really worked out for my clientele. Like I
Yeah.
skyrocketed
Yeah, yeah.
after that. I didn't no more floor shifts.
So you began the trend before it was a trend.
Yeah, well, thank God for Todd. That helped out a lot. And when I was broke as fuck, bought me a haircut. You know, he's
Oh,
like,
shit.
listen, you look disgusting as shit, so I'm gonna bring you to Supercuts and we're gonna get your haircut. I was like, thank God, because my paycheck was $300 this week.
It's a
Yeah.
grind, man. In the beginning, such a
Yeah.
grind.
Yep. No, I love that. Love that. Next question. What is the biggest attribute or skill set that you bring as a coach to your athletes and clients?
I would say, I usually tend to become very invested in their well-being. I think I can, create a connection with them pretty quickly, and I do care a lot when I work with somebody. So
Love that.
same with, I think, when I'm managing people. Like I think that's something that sometimes it's a fault for sure, but
I can
I think
attest
it
to
can
that.
be-
I can attest. Best manager I ever had. By far.
we appreciate it, bro.
By
We
far.
There we
appreciate
go.
that.
Next question, just because you did play football, I have to ask, what was your most savage play that you had playing football?
Oh man, savage play. So the first play we were playing, Central Michigan, my senior year, and I was a big fullback, and I was like 265 probably, and they had their linebacker got hurt, and they had like an 18-year-old freshman started outside linebacker, and we decided to run like power, like first play right ISO right at the linebacker, and I was like, I hit him. I took him to his back, and I put my hand on his throat, and I was like, "Oh fucking day!" And I shit.
So good.
And, yeah, I was like a different person when I played football for sure. Like I was kind of a psycho, which is weird because I'm pretty calm, like 99% of the time. But guys will attest that play with me that I definitely flipped the switch when I was on the field.
So it was only when you played.
Yeah, like I mean, if
I mean, he's a big teddy bear now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super
yeah,
nice.
I mean, I don't get that super. Like, I don't get upset about much. People always like someone will talk to Katie at a bar and they're like, "Aren't you gonna get mad?" And I'm like, "No, like what?
Nah.
Like what's
Yeah.
gonna happen?"
Yeah, we're gonna go home in 30 minutes and everything's gonna be fine. So
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
not a big deal.
You know what's funny? I don't think I ever told you. I know I told you this story before, but Todd's first bowl game was in Orlando, and I was on I think like Christmas break or something with my family in Disney, and me and my stepdad went to go watch that game. Who are you guys playing? It was Michigan State versus Boston College.
College, yeah.
Matt Ryan's last
Matt
year.
Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Ryan's last year.
He was so good in college.
He was
That's
nasty.
what I was about to ask you. How was that? Seeing him play?
Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we always played stud quarterbacks. Like the next year we played Stafford in college.
Oh,
He was,
shit.
Stafford was probably like his arm, he still has probably one of the most live arms in the
That's
NFL.
what I hear.
Like
He can sling it.
Yeah. Well, I heard rumors that he might leave Detroit.
I want to see like what happens because it's really hard to tell how good he is. Like everyone says, like Aaron Rodgers will say he's the most underrated player like in the NFL. So it's just hard to tell. Like
He has numbers.
Yeah, he has numbers.
He has numbers.
He needs Calvin Johnson back. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And a defense.
Oh, dude,
Calvin Johnson retired too early.
Yeah.
That's savage. All right. Next question. What's the wildest and craziest experience you ever had in your career?
Going to live
In
with
football?
me.
No, in I would say in general.
Oh man.
Those holiday parties we used to have.
It's in Miami, right?
No, we can't say those on air.
I was like, man, I don't know what we can say here.
You can say whatever.
I mean, we
you
can
want.
say anything. It just really depends on whether or not you want to get canned. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Man, I don't know. What's the wildest experience I ever had? Man, that's tough. I would say, probably. I mean, honestly, the most wild experience I ever had was like in high school when I got recruited. I got an opportunity at Michigan State to walk on. Like, I had no offers. I had no Division II offers. I wasn't talking to any schools. And like, I got called down to the office because a coach didn't want to talk to me, and it was Michigan State's offensive coordinator, which was just like wild because I talked to like literally tiny Division III schools, and this coach saw me play 7-on-7 and recommended it. It was just like a 1 in a million chance that he would even come say hi to me. So that was probably the wildest like moment where I was like the most shocked.
Yeah, probably change your whole life, man.
Hell yeah.
Oh, for sure. Definitely its trajectory completely shifted.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Last question, brother. What's the biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence?
Biggest piece of advice, man. I think something that I give myself a piece of advice. I think, take a moment to have gratitude. I think that I think if you look at everything that's going on right now in the United States, it's like, man, we have so much good things going on. Same with training. Like everyone wants to focus on the negative things. Mm-hmm. There's so many positive things in any training program, any group fitness, personal training, the world, your life. Like it's so hard to kind of take a second and stop and smell the roses and appreciate the good things because we're always like so focused. I think especially in this world, we're always talking about like motivational speakers and goals and moving on to the next thing and bigger and better. And there's more access to these extremely successful people on social media. So, being grateful for what you have, it's easy to get caught up in like the surroundings. I think that's a negative to having like a really powerful and like goal-oriented circle is sometimes you don't do that. Yeah. So that's something I'm working on this year, and it's easy to get lost.
Yeah, same here. We're doing the same.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you guys heard it from Todd himself.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate the hell out of you for coming on here, man. I can't wait till I get to see you in person, and hopefully COVID's over. I can give you a big ass hug. I'll have to get some longer arms, but
it's worth the risk either way.
Just make sure he doesn't wear his tight, dry fit pants on. That's it.
I mean, this motherfucker bought him for me, so you got him to blame for him. He started the trend. Yeah. All right, Todd. Thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate
Until
the love,
next
man.
time, everybody.